truth, the lies, and politics. Informative, educative, and analytical. Getting to the real issues that affect an ordinary individual in areas of leadership, governance, social, and economy. The truth, the lies, and politics.
Good evening and welcome yet again to this wonderful edition of The Truth, Lies and Politics here on Spirit TV. Your Wednesdays are covered where we do get to engage in interesting conversation. Well, my name is Paul Ekrot Eki, and this is a dynamic space where ideas collide, opinions ignite, and perspectives are challenged. But we do get to have interesting conversations that we do invite you to be a part of, and we amplify diverse voices across the table. You can be a part of this conversation when you follow us or when you get to us on our socials. That is at Spirit TV UG, on X, on Facebook, and on YouTube. Together, you and I can narrow the gap in our communities through the information shared, but through the ideas that we do exchange and have the opportunity to make a right decision or good decision that will help you and I. Well, this evening, we are continuing our conversation that we began last week, the conversation on the 20-year UMEME concession and also the handover. Well, I'd like to say that the handover already happened, and we'll be getting a little more on that conversation. But they've been a bit of sticky conversations and sticky things happening on this part. The buyout clauses here and there, back and forth. Today we have an opportunity of putting that to rest through our conversations. Well, before I do introduce the guests that we have in studio, I would like to leave this with you. After 20 years in operation, UMEME officially bowed out on March 31st, 2025. However, controversy continues to swirl around the government's buyout of the electricity distributor, with a special audit report revealing a significantly lower payout than expected. Now, was the buyout a fair deal, or is there more beneath the surface? What were the real issues leading to UMEME's exit? With UEDCL now taking over, what does the future of electricity distribution in Uganda look like? More importantly, what do citizens expect from the transition? Well, join us on The Truth, Lies and Politics as our informed panelists break down the facts, uncover the hidden details, and debate what this means for the country's power sector. Stay informed, stay engaged. All right, the conversation is already happening in studio. The spirits are high. And this evening, we are joined by a panel of three guests. To my extreme left, I have Mr. Charles Romushana, who is a former spy but also a political analyst on the show. Good evening, sir, and welcome to the show. Okay. Charles, I am. Yes. Yes, I am being informed that they're still going to sort out your microphone. You are speaking. We need the breath. They are going to give you the breath. But just give me a minute on that. I will jump very quickly to Mr. Eric Odongo, who is an economist, but also part of the team at CS Bag. He was here last week. We're glad to have you. Good evening, sir, and welcome to the show.
Good evening, Paul, and good evening to the viewers. I'm glad to be here today for my second time here at Spirit. This place is full of the Holy Spirit. So I'm really glad to discuss a very serious issue, energy.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Moving very quickly to the person in the middle is a gentleman who's making his maiden appearance on the show, and we are honored to have him on the show this evening. Mr. Kiza Jonan, I hope I have said it well. He is, you know, the spokesperson, Uganda Electricity Distribution Company Limited, now the ones who are in charge of distributing, you know, the electricity in our country and ensuring that you're connected and it is consistent. UMEME is out of the picture now. Is the bulb. Interesting. We are going to get into that conversation just in a short while. But just before we get, oh, good evening, son. Welcome to the show.
Good evening. You had even forgotten to allow me to greet the viewers. That is implying a lot. It seems really the spirits are high. I also bring power,
yes,
energy.
Yes.
So when you combine the two, the spirits and the energy, you get
electric.
a very good allotrope. And I want to think that we are going to have a very fruitful conversation.
Yes.
I bring you greetings from the Uganda Electricity Distribution Company, colleagues I work with, to distribute power up to Renshama, where my colleague Charles Romusana comes from.
So Charles is connected.
I want to think so, and if he's not, I want to assure him he will be connected. Since that government has come,
yes,
I want to trust that we are up to the task.
Yes.
And I believe we shall digest much more some of the things that are really bubbling our viewers.
Yes.
They are not very clear. I think we shall get the opportunity to shed more light on them so that we move together in the same paradigm. I mean, it's service, really.
Yes.
We want to live in harmony with our people that we serve. There are so many unknowns. Charles, I think that is really is good at that. I'm not so much inclined into the unknown. I will actually speak what I know.
Yeah.
And I think I will take my conversation into that.
Yeah.
I want to thank you.
Thank you very much. That is why we have you here, so that we allay some of the fears and the worries that we have in our citizens. Charles, I'd like to get back to you.
Yes, I told you Psalm 70, verse 4, that we should never get tired of saying God is great and merciful. So I was telling you that when God created the whole creation, of what is seen and what is seen, what is known, what is not known, and what will never be known. Because in that creation we will never know. God never consulted man, and God never sought man's help, and man never helped God in creation. So we should always humble. We are by grace.
Sure.
It's a powerful one, very, very powerful statement. God did not consult you and I. And wow, even when he has called you, he doesn't consult you to say we go. Just, it is time. Thank you very much for that message, very sobering one. And before we jump into our conversation, I would like to start with Mr. Eric here. And the week, at the tail end of last week, we had just a situation where the biggest opposition political party in parliament, that is the National Unity Platform, presenting an alternative budget to what the government is drafting for the next financial year. Just like to hear your thoughts, one or two things on it before we just get into our conversation.
Yeah, the budget, the alternative budget was presented, which is a good thing.
Presented
to the public?
To the public, and it's a good thing. What stood out is it is significantly lower than what the government is proposing.
It is 50?
It's around 57 trillion, but actually that was the first draft of government. So when I saw the 57 trillion, I was not sure if the opposition really did their budget or they were reading the draft for the first draft from government, because the first draft from government was 57 trillion.
Yes.
Then it has since increased from that. But
to about 92 trillion.
No, it's now around 71.9 trillion. But what I saw in the proposals of the opposition, I saw some good things which government could also take on. For example, on the resource side, they are talking about limiting borrowing, which is good because borrowing has really gone out of hand a bit in line of our situation at the moment. And as an economist, for me, I worry about the domestic component of borrowing because that one really affects businesses here, and ultimately it affects even government itself.
Yes.
The most important thing also that was highlighted in that presentation of the budget by the opposition was the issue around corruption. The good thing is both government and opposition agree that corruption is there.
It's a big problem.
It is something that should be tamed. So
yes.
By opposition emphasizing it in their budget, for me it's a good thing, and government should really put in effort, put in more effort than what is there right now.
Yes.
To make sure that corruption is curtailed.
All right.
In terms of priorities,
yes.
I don't see a big difference between opposition priorities and government priorities. I think that is informed by the amount which is available to put into these resources.
Okay, all right. I will save our dear guest on that one.
Sure.
That you're exempted. But I'll get to Charles very quickly. Charles, just your thoughts on
Quickly and very quickly.
You're very particular and analytical. Yes.
We used to do mock marriages when we were kids. I think I remember that time in Wenshama, as it were, pre-primary. We would do mock marriages and would have a young kid who is female standing in for a mother. And then we would cook. But we used to cook in tins of
yes.
cowboy and chimbo. I know in your villages you didn't have them. You didn't have cowboy and kimbo tins. But for us, we had them in Wenshama.
Yes.
It's what I'm seeing these people do. Because in the Committee of Finance, stroke the Committee of Budget, they sit there.
Yeah.
And the purpose of that committee is to capture views. Actually, by the way, I think at some stage the parliament interfaces with the rest of society. Yes, the business community, the
civil society.
The civil, yes. So if you have got views, present them in that committee. Rather than now you having a mock drama. I find this is silly drama really. The president is welcomed there, and that's not how it's supposed to be. If you have got any useful idea on a budget proposal, on a policy statement, present it in a committee. They even write, by the way, a minority report.
Yes, yes, they do.
They do, yes. So what is this drama for? Because if what you have won't inform decision making, then it's useless. It's not enough for them to say we are doing borrowing. Move in, opposite. If you lose, you lose.
Give alternative
That's
views
why.
also.
But in the committee, where decisions are made, not where you come in a building, you are alone, because you see they are not operating as a unit. If the other party was making it and the Prime Minister was present to hear and receive the document to take it for consideration, that would make sense. But you see, you are shunned. They are not there. So which kind of system is this? I suppose if it was not their silly innovation, then and it's by way of procedure, by law, then we need to revise it, because it's like writing on water.
Thank you. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your views. So I will then get to Mr. Kiza.
Sorry, you must have had the Prime Minister I don't know they watched that clip where the Prime Minister was quarreling with the contractor.
Well, she was not happy, yes, about the delays.
You see, if you're a Prime Minister and you have got a city engineer, or you have an engineer who supervises the contractor, you quarrel with that one.
Not with the contractor. Yeah.
Who you dismiss. You don't need to quarrel everybody, including media. Then you are quarreling with the contractor, and with the contractor, and then your engineer tells you. You see, the problem is not the quality. Now the problem is speed. Now we again shift to speed, and there is no way you will have quality if you are too fast. Yes, because these things are scientific.
Yes.
So do you have a report from the contractor? Have you had a conversation with your contractor? But you see, everything now, we are running the state. That's why I brought that issue. We are in a mode of drama. Yes, and it doesn't help. It
doesn't help. I do hear you, sir. Thank you very much for that view. Well, as we do get into our conversation of the evening, several companies have come into Uganda and have exited, some peacefully, some not peacefully, but we've had lots of those. And of course, in one way or another, they've affected our country. AfriCell, Orange, ShopRite, Gems, all of those. And, all those have affected our country in our economy in one way or another. But the one that has taken us really and brought conversation is UMEME, that has been with us for 20 years. And the 20-year concession ended and the handover was done on Monday in Lugogo, and we watched that whole, if you didn't watch, well, we were part of that conversation, that ceremony, and yeah, it was jubilation, it was celebration. But before we do get to hear from Mr. Kiza, we would like to play a small video, and it was from the board chair from UMEME, just talking about this. They seem to be prepared, for this 20-year that concession that was given. So let's just watch this, and then we shall move on.
But we can look at other countries. Several countries in Africa have invited us. World Bank has invited us. They've told us, please come. Don't give up what you've done, because you've built such a good brand, a good record. So we are not worried about the future. There are so many opportunities. It depends on appetite of the shareholders. But holding it together at the governance level is not an easy task. So they have to be very strong. We're here to support them, so it's a big deal. For us as UMEME, we knew 20 years was coming, and we are psychologically prepared to hand over this network. It's not like we're holding on. We tried to negotiate with the government a few years ago, but clearly they thought that we're giving a lot of profit to the shareholders. If that profit element is removed, and it's only government run, because a public utility should not be making profit in their view. So we understood that. So we are psychologically prepared. We told our shareholders we're going to hand over. We are no longer negotiating to keep the concession or to extend it.
All right, you have watched the board chair, that is UMEME, Mr. Patrick Bitature, and was just talking about the preparation. And just looking at this company, I think the MD, the former MD of UMEME, Mr. Celestino, is still saying that UMEME is now worth about $700 million US after this whole 20-year work. He also, was just talking about how they have grown the connectivity from about 292,000 to now we're speaking about 2.3 million, people connected, and with the losses being, significantly reduced from 33% in 2005 to 16% in 2024. And they talk about revenue collections being increased to 120%, just 120% of the figure. I think they collect monthly 200 billion, is it? Yes, per month. You'll provide clarity for that. Okay, detail of another company, yes, but you will be able to give for that. But they've been collecting quite.
Maybe in terms of percentage, what that reported was in their figures they were collecting 100.7%, meaning some people had even beyond the reporting period. There were people who were yet to use the power they had bought from UMEME at the time. I think that was in their 2023
report.
Annual report.
All right. In how much they? Eric. Okay, Eric will give it to us. Eric will give it to us. But allow me continue my conversation because I know where I'd want Mr. Kiza to get in. Just before they left, of course, there was this whole back and forth conversation. And there was, just allow me just have this short clip also, and then we can get to Mr. Kiza just to expound on what the back and forth is about, and then we can move on to UEDCL.
They were playing safe. Everyone's doing their job to the best they can. So they've played safe and they've only paid $118 million. We expected something around 200 million plus. So there's a gap, which we're going to sit down and negotiate in the next 30 days. Failure to agree, we take our documentation to an arbitration. Unfortunately, it's in London. I was hoping it would be in Uganda, but it's in London. So we are going to, they choose one of the judges, we choose one, and then the two of them choose the third. And that will be full and final binding documentation. Their decision will bind us all. So we just have to do a reconciliation exercise. All the power we've got, you know, when we began selling power, it was a very small amount. But now we're doing 200 billion shillings per month. So when you hear 513 billion, that's 2 months reconciliation. That's all that you bring forward. So don't let that be a cause for alarm.
All right, you have heard from what the chairman has been talking about, certain issues coming out there. But just to let you know that UEDCL takeover has been around for quite some time. And they've taken over, I think this is now the 6th, right?
Yep.
You know, company that they are taking over as UEDCL. And so they are up to the task, all right? But just your view on, I'm not sure whether you can you know, give your part. If that's not it, then we shall have Eric talk about it. But what was the whole issue, the back and forth? Somebody just wants to know, just an enlightenment from your part.
Someone from Kareru.
Yes.
Thank you very much, our viewers out there. I will not sound very technical. I will try to simplify the puzzle for everyone to appreciate and understand. When we signed the concession agreement with UMEME in 2005, the agreement is pregnant with specific obligations to either party. One of the parties, of course, the side of UEDCL, which is government of Uganda, was inclined to fulfill certain clauses in that agreement. And one of the clauses in that agreement was to pay a buyout amount which would be determined by an independent person, defined still in the LAA, who is the Auditor General, at the end of the natural expiration of the lease and assignment agreement. Maybe to paint a picture, what this buyout amount is, because I think that's where we need to get the pace right. UMEME was brought here in 2005 with the drive of increasing investments in the distribution space. He came as an investor, and his investments were tagged on a 20% return on investment. Now, along the way, as the concession rolled, it was realized that you cannot have a recoup of 20% out of the distribution space, maintain the tariffs at a very stable rate. So there was a negotiation that some amount of money be held by government and recovered in another year, be paid to UMEME in another year, but keep the tariff stable. Now, because of the period over time, there was an accumulation of that return on investment, the unrecovered. Now, that is what forms the buyout amount. Because the investments made are not recovered, it is the obligation, or it remained the obligation of government to pay for those investments. So
what do you mean by investments?
Okay, at the beginning of each year, the utility entities present budgets to the regulator with requirements of the things they want to add on the distribution network as new additions. It could be both non-network or network items. When we talk of network items, of course, we talk about the physical things, the transformers, the cables, you know, the substations, the switching stations, mention it all. Those are the network assets that could come as a result of the different demands that are in the distribution space. Of course, the non-network items include cars, which are also countable,
yes.
Systems that we use in our day-to-day operations, and many others. So those are the things which we are talking about that formed that investment basket that was not recovered over the period of time that was due to UMEME at the end of their concession. So it is also not true to say that, okay, like of course how the drive is, that UMEME...
So would it be like annual?
Yes, the essence...
Like I bought 100 generators or 1 billion, and I'm supposed to recover
my 1 billion plus my 20%.
Yes.
The return on investment, which is defined in the lease and assignment agreement. So that was, the negotiation was on the return on investment,
yes,
in the distribution space. Because government was oscillating between maintaining the tariff stable, but also allowing UMEME to continue recouping their investment. So there had to be a balance being stricken. So, and that's what happened actually. So what we're talking about are those unpaid investments of UMEME that form what we call the buyout amount. And of course, the lease and assignment agreement clearly spelled that amount, that figure would be determined by the Auditor General. That's why you were seeing that in terms of responsibility, the Auditor General had the final say of how much was determined as the final that government paid out to UMEME last Friday. And of course, that amount which was determined, yes, it was paid by 6 p.m. on Friday. That money had landed on UMEME's account. And they acknowledged receipt of the same. Okay. What the Auditor General approved was $118 million plus $9 million for those projects that are at the apex of completion. Yes, they are about to get complete. Yes. So, and he deemed it very wise not again to come back. Once the completion certificate is made and verification is made, UMEME's $9 million will be due to them. So in principle, a combined approval of the buyout amount was made, which is equivalent to $127 million. So this money we are talking about is money of things that we can actually see. And that's why it has taken time to verify them item by item, because some of them are countable. Even when they are systems, they are still visible. We can interface with them. We can know. So that's the buyout amount. And it is a responsibility of us as government to pay the private investor what he has invested duly here. Yes. And of course, that's why we had that long verification exercise, back and forth.
And this is still going on 31st March, is it?
Yes, the lease and assignment agreement gives them legroom. Okay. If they do not agree with the figure of the Auditor General, they can actually go into a negotiation window, which they are going to commence. Because officially, I think last week on Friday, before they handed over, yes, they issued a statement, yes, I think on Monday, yes, about their intentions to go object officially, to object to the figure. But of course, remember, they had received the other first note. So they're objecting the figure so that they go in and discuss. Okay. If things do not work out in this period of 30 days, then they will go where the lease and assignment spells them to go. What we want to really to tell our viewers that whatever is being done is in the contract that government signed with UMEME. There is nothing that they are doing that is outside the lease and assignment agreement. Whether you want to call it wrong or right, the issue is there is a binding agreement between government of Uganda, UEDCL, and UMEME. So, and it must be fulfilled to the dot. But cutting the story short, we were able to receive the asset on Monday in a very colorful ceremony, which I'm told you watched. You watched up to the end. And the distribution system returned to the owner. Ugandans need to appreciate that what UMEME has been running has not been its asset. They have been running this asset on behalf of government of Uganda. But of course, there were reasons why government was driven into that form of business model in the early 2005. There were demands that we were trying to cure then. And so many of them you have spoken about. But I will maybe really emphasize on the aspect of the energy losses that we had at the time when UMEME came here. We were slating between 30 and 40% of energy loss. And maybe for a viewer, by energy loss to a viewer is we the distributors who bring power to your socket. Yes. We also buy this power from the national grid or the national or the system owner we call transmission. Because transmission also buys this same energy, he pulls together From the generation facilities, you realize there is a symbiotic relationship between the three segments in the supply chain. And if there is any lapse at the point where we convert electrons into money, it will mean that we are not going to be able to meet the demands of transmission because we have uptaken the energy, we are unable to pay it. Of course, that in itself is a loss automatically.
Yes. So who owns the transmission?
It is government of Uganda.
Government of Uganda owns generation, owns transmission, and now distribution.
Government of Uganda government of Uganda is 100% the owner of the three successor companies of UEB.
Yes.
Of course, when UEB was disbanded, we created three.
Yeah.
Generation to look after the generation facilities of the country.
Yes.
Then we had only one. Transmission was to look at the national grid, what you call the system. And of course, distribution was to cater for the power that goes into the sockets or in our bulbs at home. So, but you realize at the time and the spirit in which these companies were created, we were trying to cut the umbilical cord of these companies from the consolidated fund. Because they had added a lot of stress on the consolidated fund. And the only way they could survive independently was to make money amongst themselves. That distribution converts money into electrons, converts electrons into money, but also buys the same energy from transmission. Transmission also is like an assembly, is like a pool, because every generator in this country adds power on the system, what you call the system, or the national grid.
Yes.
So it is the system that defines how much generation they uptake from all, I think currently the 73 power plants we have in the country, because they must uptake all of them.
Yes.
They have invested here and they deserve a share of partaking what is in the transmission space.
Yes.
So ideally, what we are trying really to really demonstrate is that sustainable model of business that is in the supply chain of electricity, so that the listener does not really feel that why is government selling to government? From generation to transmission up to distribution. It's because of that sustainable model.
As we continue, and I really do thank you very much for giving us such a beautiful background. And I know that now the clarity is out there. But Eric, you had something to add to your thoughts.
Yeah. I have a bit of a concern because I expected him to bring it, but somehow it didn't come out.
Raise it then.
There is this aspect of dimmed energy. Now, we have 73 in generation. They moved to one.
73 power plants.
Yes, 73 power plants supplying to one government entity, which is Uganda Transmission.
Yes.
Then
and
now
that includes Agro-Max?
No, Agro-Max.
Those are generators.
Is in the generation space. There are three spaces.
Yeah, Agro-Max supplies government.
Yes, that is to the transmitter, Uganda Electricity Transmission Company.
And at the same time, Agro-Max is UMEME. It's the same
Hydromax, not Agro, Hydro.
It's Electromax.
Electromax and Hydromax.
Yes, I remember the Max.
Okay, so my issue is we have from basic economics, demand and supply. In 2005, we had a problem of supply. So we went to cure supply. We seem to have forgotten about demand, because by then the demand was there. Then we ended up with 73 plants.
So supply was sorted.
They give to one aggregator called Uganda Electricity Transmission Company, which now has UEDCL plus its peers, other rural distribution schemes. Now, a sector is now faced with a problem of the 9,000 megawatts, which is stuck with the 900 megawatts, which is stuck with this one transmitter called Uganda Electricity Transmission Company. It cannot come to decide because UEDCL has nowhere to put it.
Thank you. But let me also draw perspective.
Yes.
The total installed capacity that we have in the country is 2,050 megawatts.
Yes.
In the amended Electricity Act, 2,050 megawatts. In the amended Electricity Act of 2022, there are things that were seen that were never envisaged in the 1999 Electricity Act. And one of them was the monopoly aspect of the transmitter. This he's referring to was cured. Okay. It is true that today distribution can actually buy directly from the generation facilities. We can, the law allows us. For example, I'll give you an example. They are in our different parts of the network that where we supply, we have embedded mini hydros. I'll give an example. In Bulisa, we have Waki Dam. It is 4.5 megawatts. If we have load in that area that can consume that power, the law allows us to buy directly from Waki Dam without even consulting UETCL. Okay. So there is already that leg room in the law. So it cures what he says. Elsewhere, even where we have mini plants, we have seen in certain areas where we have been evacuating power plants. Say, for example, in Achua in Padel.
Yes.
I know that was where most of the discussion around the deemed energy came from. But you need to appreciate for the period government took without constructing the transmission line, UDCL was evacuating Achua hydropower plant, the 8.5 megawatts. And to really answer the question of deemed energy, it's a very strategic debate. Okay. Because deemed energy, who defines the deemed energy? Because you see the energy that we generate, we don't store. It goes to waste if we don't utilize it. That's why you realize that today Ugandans will tell you that we have some energy that we export out. The entire thirst of this country, if you looked at it at peak, probably we may not be making 1,200 megawatts. But it does not mean that all plants are generating at full capacity for you to have unutilized energy. Because at the beginning of the day, there is an apportionment. The reason why transmission does exist is to define the loads
in different regions, based on the demand.
Based on how on the demand patterns, how they evolved. That's why you have a system controller. You will know, today I'm going to dispatch 250 megawatts of Bujagari, I will dispatch Isimba 180, I will dispatch Karuma maybe 100. They make sure that there is total share of the generation of the dispatch for each of the power plants, but also based on the appetite that is out for consumption. So it is not really
so we don't have energy that is we produce a lot and there are no people to consume.
You see, we have two things.
Yes.
There is installed capacity, but there is also what we call the real energy, which is being produced. For example, the installed capacity of Isimba is 183. The issue is, does UETCL uptake the entire 183? I'm sorry you have taken me now into the generation discussion, but I feel we just need to shed light.
That's why you're here.
It's really right. I am tempted to speak about a docket which is outside me. But
at least if you can shine more light
because I worked in UGCL.
Yes, thank you.
But what really this implies, transmission will look at the appetite of the country. If I have an appetite of 900 megawatts and I have maybe 3 or 4 plants that are producing at a given capacity, they would uptake a percentage of those power plants and they tell them to scale down. That you do not produce this much, we are going to uptake so and so. And that's how they do it. They keep balancing. And also, because we are on the East African power pool, we also we export some of the energy to the neighboring countries. Not because we don't want to use it, but you also want to create stability of these grids that are interconnected. If you are not dispatching to these grids, you will keep getting chances of your grid tripping. So there is that going off. The grid goes off because you are not adding. It means they are draining from you. You must be adding. You must be having something that you're adding. But also, Charles and our people in Renshama, electricity is in such a way that it goes where there is thirst. If, for example,
in Renshama, they are not.
If in Renshama there is, Charles has established
only just has a small
gold factory, which is consuming 20 megawatts.
Let's look at that factory that is in Intongamo right now.
In
Intongamo. We are going to debate that.
You are awakening a certain spirit in Charles, which I didn't want to take. But
let him fit.
But the point is, I was trying to show you that it is actually also not right for us to say that we have a lot of redundant energy. We don't have it. Actually, most of the energy that we are seeing and we call redundant, it is because demand has not grown. If one factory came and it is uptaking 200 megawatts, probably you may go into a crisis. That's why you see the investments in these three spaces must not lapse at any one point T.
Okay.
Today we may not celebrate that we have 22,050 megawatts. We will get only one plant
that does
that consumes
200.
yes, and the country now will start going into blackouts
That's
because energy will be driven to where there is thirst.
Wow,
So
that's a
drains.
different perspective. Yes.
You get the point, and that's why you hear even in our local villages where we come from in Mukono, someone who is at the extreme side of the transformer, I tell you, my bulb is dim. I don't have energy, it is flickering. Probably maybe there are people in between.
Demand there.
Yes, there are people who are pulling from that grid. You get so it is really a sophisticated debate, but I hope
you're doing well.
Added,
you're doing well in
some meaningful contribution to our economy.
We haven't heard from Charles, but Eric,
the issue of dimmed energy.
Yes,
I think yes, there are cases where we had contracts as government where we were paying that kind of energy, that a person comes, establishes a plant, and he expects you to uptake it. And if you don't uptake it, the obligation is yours to pay for that energy. Because it is not his problem that you are not uptaking his plant. You get the point? Because there is an undertaking. But also, the drivers of some of those scenarios are the delays in some of these transmission evacuation projects. If you look at, for example, the project from Karuma to Nebi, you realize the time it took is such a long time that you would have even constructed more than 4 power plants to just acquire leave to establish these pylons. Wow. So the land acquisition bit of it becomes a strain on even a simple process of just constructing an evacuation line because of the back and forth you'll go through to acquire the land and have a transmission project probably go through. So there are really so many other factors that drive the dimmed energy.
Yes.
Otherwise,
Eric, we're getting to you.
I just wanted to mention something. He has mentioned about the buying of energy which has been produced but not taken up. Now, in all that, I think we should be looking at what is that cost
to the individual,
because it doesn't make it is difficult to explain to someone that, you know, as a taxpayer you're losing money to someone who produced electricity but we cannot buy. Then at the same time, this person is on the other extreme side and is
the taxpayer come in now.
And
well, I think he said the consolidated fund now does no longer pay. So where does the taxpayer come in?
Maybe from our economists, the way how, Charles, we derive some of these resources to establish this infrastructure, some of them they are concessions. Government borrows money at a small really concession fee, and then they come and they establish infrastructure, which ordinarily would have taken you maybe like 50 years to consolidate money at a go to build a power plant. So we borrow. Now, because we borrow, the sector generates that money. For example, I'll give you an example. Isimba and Karuma, the government flagship projects, we are paying for them through the energy that we buy. It is part of it. Yeah, it's part of the tariff. It is our responsibility as Ugandans
to pay
that establish that because the infrastructure belongs to us. And most of these power plants, depending on the agreements they have signed with government, some of them are build, operate, and transfer. They are given a period of, say, maybe 20 years. After maybe 20 or 30 years, that plant cedes from a private player and returns to government. So there are so many other dynamics. You may need to look at all of them for you to conclude some of these standpoints from an economic point of view. But also, our economists will also be very faithful and truthful to us. There is no country which does not borrow. All countries across the globe borrow.
They borrow, yes.
And they borrow to invest in some of these capital-intensive projects, which ordinarily you would not raise money from the taxpayers' pockets directly.
I totally do. Let me first get to Charles on this one.
When we borrow and we are not efficient on the end side of it, then they still lost because.
So the concern
is difficult to explain to this person that government is indebted and
And you're
yet
not
I
seeing-
don't have power in my house. So that bit brings in an economic aspect called efficiency.
Okay.
Now, we talked about UMEME when we're starting in terms of efficiency, where someone is saying, okay, at least load shedding has reduced. But now, where you have an aspect of government borrowing to finance an energy project, and it's very good he has brought about the Karuma Navy line. Now, issues around efficiency in government, because you don't have right of way, but you have borrowed to, you have not yet begun putting a pole because you have not compensated.
The people
Now you are
there.
paying concession fees on the money you have borrowed.
The
For him,
economist
he's
is
looking at
concerned
it from
about the money.
when the money gets to this corporation of government. But before it gets there, you have committed resources where government has not drawn, and a taxpayer is paying for government not drawing that money. At the same time, he doesn't have power in his house.
All right.
Then even when the power comes,
It's
this
dim.
person is now listening to, I have an issue of dimmed energy.
Okay.
Then
All right.
I don't have power
Can-
in the house.
Can,
I think
can
that is
Mr. Kiza
efficiency.
put that to rest, because we'll need to hear
Okay,
from Charles. I really need us to.
Our economist is really running around with money,
Yes.
and I appreciate the discussion, to be
Yeah.
honest. But I want us to be realistic. It has taken us close to 13 years to complete the Karuma hydropower plant. Close to 13 years. 600 megawatts. You're going to get one investor like this who is going to sweep the entire Karuma. Now, if you're going to say that it's demeriting for you to have money to sleep on your account as you undertake feasibility studies to build an hour power plant, you are causing government a loss. But you're also not looking at so many other things that come into play when you don't have money and you also have to continue planning. So it is a chicken-egg situation. Must government wait to acquire way leave, then they borrow money? Because also the process of borrowing is a long process.
It's a whole process.
It's not a one-day process that you can achieve it in 2 weeks as soon as you get the way, or maybe the leave of way. That's when you will go up to parliament. If it is huge money, you go and get the money, and then you start investing. You will still have a lag of time in between you completing acquiring way leaves and going and getting these funds. So it is a discussion you can choose to swing on the side of economics, but also I will also swing it on the side of the social part. That there are so many, and even Charles will bring a political angle, that there are aspects which will come in and they affect what my colleague is trying to say. But maybe to really draw clarity, the issue of us maybe having dimmed energy and our people in Kalero don't have power, I think it is a combination of so many things that we need to look at. The issue of investments, if you realize today, yes, I'm going to talk about efficiency, because efficiency is driven by investments. If you have not invested in the distribution space, there is no how you're going to expect it to be very efficient. Can we look at how much has been invested in the distribution space for the last 20 years? You are an economist, you know these numbers more than I, and more than any other person who is being there. You realize that from the challenge of supply that we had, the generation challenge we had in Uganda, there was a lot of drive into the generation space. And now that we have gotten out of that red line, government started again constructing so many transmission substations and extending the transmission grid across the country. But you realize that what was invested in the distribution space was not commensurate with what was being invested in the transmission and generation space. So you will have fatigue on the other extreme side of the supply chain. These ones are up there, and the other side where you are converting the money into electrons, you have not done.
Right.
And this, when we come to this show, we should be seeing that there is now another government drive. Government is now moving towards investing in distribution.
All right.
Yes, and that's why you see some of these capitalizations are coming through.
Yeah.
Government is borrowing money to invest in the distribution space, so that you bring it to a level where you do not water down the achievements which have been made in the transmission and the generation space.
All right.
And of course,
I do-
of course, our economists will also tell you, but you have built a transmission substation in Karamoja, which is maybe 280 MVA, and you don't have load there. But must we wait for load to go there for us
you
to
to
establish a substation? How do you drive that load there? You must have something that is pulling, that inertia of things, that is pulling the investor to go and invest in Karamoja.
Mr. Kiza,
so some of these things should really come first.
Thank you very much. It's now 5 minutes to 9, but we're going to start with Charles right after this break. And already we are having questions coming through on our WhatsApp, and I think that our numbers will go on. In case you'd like to be a part of this conversation, go on to our socials, put your question there. We have Mr. John Kiza from UEDCL. But Charles, when it comes to government running these institutions, people tend to get jittery, you know, and there are concerns, there are worries from your perspective, you know, and from what you have seen, the analysis that you've seen before when government has taken over some of these institutions, you know, those things that make people jittery, and we shall put that to John Kiza also to answer whether they are capable of dealing with those issues.
Sure.
When we come back, we are going to start off with Charles Romushana.
Truth, the lies, and politics. Informative, educative, and analytical. Getting to the real issues that affect an ordinary individual in areas of leadership, governance, social, and economy. The truth, the lies, and politics